Well, as we can all see from that video, Ryan is a classic success story. He's the ultimate entrepreneur, and we wish him even more successes. We know he will be. I don't know, Anthony, if you're aware that we have wineries in San Mateo County or not.
Absolutely. It feels like there's a lot of hidden gems in San Mateo County.
Oh, good. I'm glad you know that. So, of course, we have the ones with the vineyards, and we also have urban wineries. Today, we thought we'd give our viewers a look at Russian Ridge Winery in San Carlos. So let's take a look at that. We're here with Scott Townsend, owner of Russian Ridge Winery in San Carlos, and it's a pleasure to be here. I love the winery. What can you tell us about it? What made you open this winery, and when did you do that?
Well, we opened in September, at this location, September of 14. Prior to that, for 2 years, we were making our wine as an alternating proprietor over at Cuvée, which is up the road a quarter of a block. And then prior to that, we got started at Rockwall Winery, west end of Alameda with Rockwall Winery, Shauna Rosenblum. And the rest is history. We've been open every weekend since.
Okay, so you are open every weekend. Do you want to just tell the viewers which days and what your
Friday evening from 5 until 9. Last call is 8:45 or so. And then Saturday and Sunday from noon until 5, both days. So.
Now I know from having been in here before that you enter all kinds of wine competitions, and I think you've won some pretty prestigious awards. You want to tell us about those?
Well, we've had the two highest accolades are the San Francisco Chronicle double golds. In order to get a double gold, when the judges independently evaluate the wine first time around, they rate it gold, silver, bronze, or not at all. And if all the judges choose gold independently, it becomes a double gold. So it's not, if you had 5 judges, if you get 4 golds and a silver, and then the silver after the discussion decides to change to a gold, it's still just a gold. So those are our 2 highest ones. We've gotten multiple golds and silvers, bronze. We got a best of class, or a silver, actually, from our 12 Pinot from the Pinot Shootout, which is a Pinot Noir exclusive competition, about 500, I believe it was 500 wines that year.
Wow.
Just Pinot Noir, and we were invited to pour up at Reno at their event. So,
and those grapes are from the Santa Cruz Mountains.
Santa Cruz Mountains. The vineyard is located up on Summit Road, about 6¼ miles south of 17. If you find Regale, Burrell Schools, the fence, and this vineyard. It was planted in 1992 by David Bruce, and he used cuttings from the Mount Eden vineyards.
Wow.
So it's the vineyard has a good heritage. So.
Now you've partnered with, it's interesting, I don't think too many people know yet, it's a well-kept secret and we hope to change that there are a lot of urban wineries in San Carlos, Belmont, Redwood City. So I know you've partnered with Flying Suitcase and Cuvée and Waxwing and La Honda. Will you tell us a little bit about what you've put together?
Well, we found in our tasting room and talking to Michael Annunziato over at Domenico,
yes.
Paul Rogerville at Cuvée, and Vicky and Anders, that people come in and they consistently say the same thing: we didn't know you were here. So to that end, I gathered all the winemakers. We invited a few that didn't participate, but La Honda from Redwood City, and then all of the wineries were invited that make wine over at Cuvée, as well as Domenico, Flying Suitcase. We included Redwood Coast Cider Works, which is down here on Cherry, because they operate on an O2 license the same as us. We all ferment fruit. They just happen to do apples.
Oh,
So it's a cider works. So we included them. Some couldn't make it at night, so we held a meeting here at 10 o'clock in the morning and then 7 o'clock that night, and decided to pool our funds to make up a rat card.
yes.
And we put the location
With a map, and
with
that's
a
great,
map on it and
exactly.
everything.
Uh-huh.
I'm thinking since I started getting wineries to participate in the San Carlos Wine Walk, which was held last December 13, sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce of San Carlos, that there's actually another 5 wineries between the two. That happened we got together to form the card, design the card in June, and then October, November, we found out that there's 5 more wineries here in San
Wow.
Carlos between those two.
Uh-huh.
So 15, 16 wineries between Whipple and Harbor.
And all within walking distance of the train. I mean, pretty
Yes.
much. So if you can walk a straight line, it's a pretty quick trip.
Or
A little
crawl.
longer going back, right? Yeah, now I know your son Spencer's in the business as well. Is that right?
He stands to walk into the business if he chooses to. If he doesn't, no hard feelings. So.
Right. And in terms of private events, I know Domenico certainly is building a large meeting space. Many of the wineries do private events. How do you feel about those? Are you open to those? Do you have a space limitation for them?
We can hold about 35 people here, so it's we're the small end of the spectrum. If you need something larger, either Domenico or Devil's Canyon. Paul Rogerville at Cuvée has a little bit more capacity than we do. Mostly birthday parties, focused wine tastings at tables with some cheese and crackers and
Great.
just have a good time, and we'll talk about the wine.
What do you think, if you had to tell people one thing about wine that you don't think they really would know or understand, what do you think that would be?
Well, I was reading K&L's, I think it's a monthly newsletter, and one of the sections in there was about an epiphany wine, and I think a lot of people aren't aware of what an epiphany wine is. And essentially that's a wine that if you, when you taste it, or somewhere after that, you make the comment, I didn't know wine could do that or taste that way. My only epiphany wine at this point was an old vine Cab Franc from Koundé. We were tasting there about 4 o'clock, finished there, got in the car and was going across the Golden Gate Bridge. So we're talking maybe an hour, hour and a half later, and I was chewing on the Cab Franc
Wow.
because I could still taste it. It was huge in my
Wow.
mouth. So to know that a wine could last in your finish that's an hour and a half,
Wow.
not just to taste it, but to be chewing on it, was truly an epiphany for me. I had no idea wine could taste that way, last that long.
So one thing that I learned from you, and I hope you'll share it with the people watching, is about how long you recommend decanting a wine before you drink it.
Well, the best way to explain that is an experience that I had. 2 other couples, my wife and I, get together and do things together up on 395, hiking, and we did canoeing in the Boundary Waters in Minnesota. And 3 of us have birthdays in April, so we went over to Valerie and Steve Jones, and his dad had a nice cellar, and so he rated that cellar for a 1952 Chateau Mouton Rothschild.
Oh.
So that was the buds form in the vineyard. The buds form for that 52 vintage in the fall of 51, and that's my birth year. So I was about 6 months older than the wine. Pulled the cork, it crumbled. We tasted it. I poured a half a glass and we tasted it, and the best that you could say for it is it was wet. And I almost shudder to think how many bottles of fabulous wine got poured out because they tasted it right away and said, there's nothing here.
Right.
And all the fruit is gone. So every half hour after that, we tasted it. There was no fruit, no flavor, no finish. After the first half hour, after an hour, we started getting a little bit of nose off of it, some mid-palate, still no finish. Hour and a half, we started to get some nose, some fruit coming up in the middle and a slight finish. And at 2 hours, it was time to sit down to eat. So I poured everybody an equal share in their glass. And that first sip was the sweetest, ripest, smoothest bowl of red cherries that you'd probably, I mean, you'd almost think it was just red cherry juice.
Huh.
Not a lot of tannins, no oak per se. It was just smooth cherries. And I looked at Steve and I said, Steve, I get it. I see where somebody would pay $1,000 for that bottle of wine. That was what the internet said it was, plus or minus $50. I don't have that kind of money. But the point being is that you take one of probably the best wines I'll ever drink, because I can't afford that, and you give it a couple hours and it goes from wet to the best wine I've ever tasted.
And you've even suggested, I remember you telling us, or you're telling us that oftentimes decant it overnight.
We take these wines home that have been opened either late Saturday or sometime Sunday, and I can't officially recommend it, but I know that when Wednesday or Thursday rolls around, with just a cork, half the bottle, they're better than they were on Saturday and Sunday. So I think it has to be a wine that's built big and bold. A lot of wines, I think, on your grocery store shelves, as an example, are not built to last. They're built for immediacy.
Immediate consumption, right.
Yeah. I read some article, I think it was winebusiness.com, that said the average lifespan of a bottle of grocery store wine is about 20 minutes from the front door to when the cork comes out.
Wow.
So
Okay.
they're built for that demographic. Ours are built to enjoy now,
Sure.
but it's just, when I taste my home wines, they're just going to get better and better. So I'm excited about that.
Well, thank you so much for letting us share your beautiful winery with people, and I love your wines, so keep up the great work.
Thanks for joining our club.
Well, as you've seen, Scott is another successful entrepreneur who's passionate about what he does. And I'm glad you were here to share it with us, Anthony. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you for all of you who've tuned in to watch As Fresh as It Gets. We'll see you next time.